Good morning, folks.
Good morning.
How's everybody doing?
Woke up thinking we had the lecture exam today, so felt better realizing we didn't.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's never good to scare yourself at 8 a.m. That's never good. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Just taking a moment to let everybody into the class here. Okay, thank you, Rebecca, for being here. Appreciate that. Okay, welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a nice weekend. You know, the weather was beautiful. I hope you were able to get outside. As I said before, this is my favorite time of the year. Okay. I see your message, Christian. Thank you. All right, welcome back, everybody. All right, so let's just take stock of where we are in the semester. Can you believe, and let me just look at the syllabus here. We are starting our 6th week of the semester, our 6th week, folks. We're not far away from the halfway point, are we? I mean, that's crazy. All right, so we're entering the 6th week of the course. Next week, you have lecture exam 1. That's a big deal. I mean, that's a big deal. Lecture exam 1 next Tuesday. And I'll talk to you more about that on Thursday. But let me just say, on Tuesday of next week, what you will do is log into classmarker.com at 8 a.m. and take your lecture exam. There is no need to join Zoom at 8 a.m. with me because I won't be online at the Zoom channel at 8 a.m. Okay. So I'll remind you of these things on Thursday. I'll probably also send a class-wide email out so that, you know, people get this in their inbox and you can read exactly what's supposed to happen next Tuesday. Okay. So we're going to finish our coverage of chapter 4 today and very likely start a little bit of chapter 5. In Thursday's lecture, we'll continue with chapter 5. Today in lab, we're going to start new content with the skeletal muscle. So it's going to be very busy, and that's just part of a college course. Okay. So do you have any questions right now? Okay. So just to let you know, for your lecture exam next Tuesday, I will be giving you all 1 hour and 25 minutes to take that exam. Okay, I'm going to give you an extra 10 minutes beyond normal class time to take it. So that means that you'll be finishing the exam around 9:25 in the morning. And so I intend to start lab a few minutes late next week to give you a little break between your exam and the lab time. We'll probably start lab about 9:45 a.m. next Tuesday. And I'll indicate that in the class-wide email that I send out, okay? So just trying to get you aware of things that are happening and, you know, stay up to speed. Okay, let me ask you in the chat window. So there's a question about how many questions are on this exam. I would say there's about 20 multiple choice, 20 fill in the blank, and then there's 4 essay questions. And the essay questions themselves will have multiple questions within them. Okay. So let me ask in the chat window. Okay. Are you aware of the lecture exam 1 study guide on Wiley Plus? Have you taken a look at that? Okay. I just want you to be sure that you're not missing important information, right? There is a study guide on the lecture portion of Wiley Plus for lecture exam 1, and it also references the tissue practice question. Okay, so have you seen the tissue matching practice question on Wiley Plus? Have you seen that? Okay, I just want to be sure you're taking advantage of every resource you have available to try to get ready for this thing. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, please speak up and I'll show you. Otherwise, what I want to encourage you to do over the next couple days, certainly by Thursday's class, is take a good hard look at the study guide. And if you have any questions you would like to ask about any content that will come out of the first 4 chapters of the book, right? That's what the exam will be on, chapters 1, 2, 3, 4. If you have any questions on any topics you'd like to ask, I will open the class on Thursday asking you if you have questions on topics you want to talk about, so I can try to give you some support getting ready for this big exam, okay? I also encourage you, for those that are using tutors and things like that, I encourage you to take the study guide into the tutor and say, hey, here's some topics that I know I'm going to be tested on. Can you help me better understand pH or osmosis or whatever the topic is that you're concerned with? I have no problem with that. I want you to take the study guide to the tutor and say, hey, please help me understand this. Okay. All right, so we're going to get started here in chapter 4, but do you have any questions? Okay. All right, folks, let's get started here. I'm going to share my screen with you. And here's our note-taking Word document. Now, from last time, we were talking about some properties and characteristics of connective tissue, and we mentioned that connective tissue is an oddball in the sense that it's the only type of tissue that's made of cells and something else called extracellular matrix. So here we are. These are the last notes we took from last time talking about the extracellular matrix. Okay, we said that the extracellular matrix is made of something called ground substance and extracellular fibers. Okay, if you want some visualization, you could be looking at figure 4.8. Figure 4.8. We were talking about a variety of cells in this picture, but on the bottom right corner of figure 4.8, please notice that there is that phrase ground substance. Ground substance is all the material between the cells and the extracellular fibers. We said its composition can vary depending on its physical location in the body. So the ground substance at one location is not necessarily exactly chemically identical to the ground substance at another location. It depends on the anatomical needs of the body. So the composition of the ground substance can vary from very liquidy, like like blood. The plasma is extracellular matrix, right? It is. To something more firm, like a jello-like consistency. Well, we said that the ground matrix contains a lot of water and a variety of solutes. Let's talk a little bit about the solutes. Okay. So one category of solutes refers to a group of molecules, a type of molecule, a category of molecule that has a big long name. It's called a glycosaminoglycan, or GAG for short. So one category of solutes includes the glycosaminoglycans, or GAGs for short. Okay. Now, I don't expect you to know anything about the chemistry of these things. I really don't. So don't worry about the chemistry of these things. But, there are big, long, complicated molecules in our body. Glycosaminoglycans, or GAGs for short, is a group of molecules. It's a group of, it's a category of solutes. Let me give you some examples of molecules you may have heard of in this group. So this includes, members of this category include hyaluronic acid. hyaluronic acid. Okay. All right. So let me see here. Let me ask a question in the chat window. Do you have any skin cream at home that has hyaluronic acid in it? Okay. What I'm saying is hyaluronic acid is a very common component of skin creams. So, next time you're at the medicine cabinet or wherever you keep your skin creams, just take a look at the ingredient label and see if you can find hyaluronic acid. Let me just flash up an image search from, in this case, Bing. Okay. Hold on a second. Don't have enough space here. Oh, come on, for crying out loud. Okay. It's not what I wanted to show you. Okay. There we go. There's a skin cream with hyaluronic labeled across, the top of the label. The point is that many skin creams do have hyaluronic acid. Hyaluronic acid is a type of molecule that's part of the ground substance, and it helps, as we get old, as we age, some of the properties and stretchiness and natural suppleness of our skin, it deteriorates. And so hyaluronic acid is kind of like adding filler to a little bit of the connective tissue of your skin, and it helps refresh the appearance of your skin. Okay. So that's one type of sol you will find in the category of glycosaminoglycans. Here's another one that I bet you've heard of. Members of this category include hyaluronic acid of skin cream fame and chondroitin sulfate. Okay, chondroitin sulfate. I don't know how much you pay attention to advertisements on television and so forth, but every once in a while I do pick up on an ad for a joint supplement that contains chondroitin sulfate, right? Chondroitin sulfate is a molecule typically found in the ground substance of the extracellular matrix of our joints. Okay, so it's a joint health molecule of joint supplement fame. And just again to show you a quick blip on that, let's see here, we have joint health. Okay, I can bring this up. Oh, that didn't help me. At any rate, there is a bottle there, which hopefully you can say says glucosamine and chondroitin. Chondroitin is what I'm after to show you, okay? So it's pretty common that these things are in our supplements. Okay, so don't worry about the chemistry, just be aware of these names, right? They are names that you find in the textbook. In the text below figure 4.8, I see ground substance and I see boldface terms for hyaluronic acid and chondroitin sulfate. Okay, so we're referencing that content. It may be of interest for you to know, if I go back for just a moment to hyaluronic acid. Hyaluronic acid has been identified as a molecule that flesh-eating bacteria actually consume. Okay, I'll say that again. Flesh-eating bacteria, bacteria that literally eat your flesh, eat your skin. Obviously, that's very serious and can kill you. These necrotizing bacteria, they actually eat hyaluronic acid in the dermal layer of your skin as though it is a food source. They use it as food. Okay, so it's something that scientists are aware of, and scientists are trying to find solutions for these problems. Okay. All right, folks. I'm going to let things rest with that, okay? Plenty of things to do here. So we have the ground substance of the extracellular matrix, and we have the extracellular fibers. Okay. Now, that term fiber, when you hear the term fiber in this context, what that's going to refer to is typically a chain of protein, where you have one protein linked to another protein, linked to another protein, and on and on. Think about the chain hanging off the back of a tow truck. It's made of links of steel, right, that are intertwined with each other. Well, in this case, each link would be a protein. So when you have an extracellular fiber, you have a chain of protein. In this context, fiber refers to a chain of protein. Okay. There are basically three types of fibers that exist. That have been identified as part of the extracellular matrix fiber composition. That would be collagen fibers. Okay, so you do have some example on figure 4.8. If you look at the bottom photograph, you see an artificially color-coded collagen fiber. Let me just ask you in the chat window. What color is the collagen fiber in the bottom picture of figure 4.8? What color is it? Okay, great. Thank you, Alex and Christina. It's orange. Okay, I just want to be sure that you are actually looking at it. Please know that it is not really an orange colored molecule. It's simply artificially colored orange by computers to make your textbook look more impressive. Okay, it's not naturally colored orange. Okay. So collagen fibers obviously are chains of collagen proteins linked together. Okay. And we'll say that this is, collagen fibers are commonly found in bones, cartilage, tendons, and ligaments. Okay. Second type of fiber are your elastic fibers. Okay, elastic fibers are made of chains of protein called elastin, right? Collagen is a type of protein. There's other proteins. This one's called elastin. So this is a chain of elastin proteins linked together. Okay. Elastin is exactly what it says it is. It's elastic. Okay. It's very stretchy. Elastic fibers are very stretchy. And your book tells you that an elastic fiber can stretch to 150% of their original unstretched length. Okay, they can stretch to a length of 150% of their relaxed length. Okay, you are going to commonly find elastic fibers in skin, in your blood vessels. So, it's good that our blood vessels can stretch. That's part of the reason they can stretch, because of these elastic fibers, and the lung tissue. Okay. Now, there's a third type of fiber, which are the reticular fibers. Okay. Reticular fibers are also made of collagen. They're also made of collagen. So you might say, well, if they're made of collagen, why aren't they called collagen fibers? The reason they're called reticular fibers is because the structure of the collagen protein is different. How it is organized, how it is arranged in the reticular fibers is different from the collagen fibers, okay? So it's like, you know, if you had a shoestring, if you had a shoestring that you pulled out of your shoe and you were just holding it between your fingers, okay, the shoestring would be the collagen fiber. But then if I tied it into a bow, I might call it a reticular fiber because its organization is different. How it is arranged becomes different, okay? So these are also made of collagen protein, but the protein is arranged differently than with collagen fibers. Okay. Reticular fibers are commonly found in the spleen and your lymph nodes. Okay. All right, gang. So that kind of summarizes what the connective tissue extracellular matrix is made of. Do you have any questions at this moment? Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is just give you a quick discussion of one type of connective tissue. Again, we don't have time to do everything on all the tables. It's just too much. But I'm just going to choose for right now to talk to you a little bit about the adipose tissue of the adipose tissue of table 4.4. So if you go to table 4.4 in your textbook and look at panel B as in boy, table 4.4 panel B, let's take a look a little bit at the adipose connective tissue. Okay. All right, so let's just talk about this a little bit. As you look down in table 4.4 panel B, what can we say? All right, so adipose tissue is made of cells called adipocytes. Okay, you can cleanly see them if you're looking at panel B of table 4.4. Okay. Is made of adipocytes. Okay. It may be of interest to you that adipocytes originate from fibroblasts. Okay, so remember from last class, we talked about fibroblasts as a type of collagen synthesizing factory. Well, some fibroblasts will become adipocytes. So I have a question for you that I'm going to put into your notes. When one type of cell changes into another type of cell, what is the process of change called? Do you know the answer to that? If you know the answer, please type it into the chat window. When one type of cell changes into another type of cell, what is the process of change called? Okay, we're coming into Halloween. Okay, good. Russell, Sierra, you hit it. Awesome. I can see there's some studying taking place and it makes me happy. Good, good, good. That's what I'm fishing for. Differentiation. Differentiation. Excellent. So think about this. We're coming into the we're in October, we're approaching Halloween. And I like the old time horror movies that really aren't that scary, like the old time Dracula and Frankenstein and stuff. But at any rate, think about, the classic example of the Wolfman movies, the werewolves, where the guy is a guy until the full moon comes out. And then what happens? He changes, he metamorphosizes, he transforms, he differentiates into a wolf or a werewolf. Okay. So think about the man turning into the werewolf. Think about the caterpillar turning into a butterfly. That's sort of what we're talking about here. Okay. Here's another question associated with this topic. Okay, there it is. When a cell differentiates into another cell, there is always a change in blank expression. What word goes into that blank? When a cell differentiates into another cell, there is always a change in blank expression. What should go in that blank? Okay, so I'm just looking at the chat window, and Sierra, ding, 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 you win the prize today. Exactly. Gene. Gene is the term that should go in there. Okay. Right. When a cell differentiates into another cell, there is always a change in gene expression. Okay. All right. Okay, so we've said here that the tissue is made of adipocytes. Adipocytes are these large cells that have a large fat droplet in it. That fat droplet is made of an accumulation of triglyceride molecules. Okay, and in fact, it has so much triglyceride, you see what happens to the cell nucleus. The cell nucleus gets pushed away from the center of the cell out towards the border of the cell. It's kind of jammed up against the plasma membrane. Do you notice that? It is so full with fat that the nucleus gets shoved up against the inside wall, the plasma membrane of the cell. Okay. Adipocytes are filled with triglycerides, so much so that the cell's nucleus is pushed against the inner border of the plasma membrane. Okay. Number 3, if we as human beings, as animals, if we gain excess body weight, if we take on additional fat for whatever reason, okay, please know that as you gain weight, you increase the number and sometimes volume of the adipocytes that you have in your body. And that correlates also with an increase in the blood vessels that have to go into that tissue. Okay, so weight gain is achieved by increasing the number of adipocytes and the volume of adipocytes that already exist. Okay. There's a health consequence to this. Okay. If you're going to increase the number of cells present, then those cells need nutrients and oxygen to live, right? If you're going to have more cells in your body, doesn't it make sense that those more cells need blood supply to live? So that means that as we add fatty tissue to our body, we increase the number of blood vessels, the vasculature that must serve those new extra fat cells. Okay. Adding extra adipocytes requires the body to make additional blood vessels. Okay. If we make additional blood vessels, that means we're going to have additional blood circulation into that new additional tissue. And what I'm saying is that that increases the stress on your heart. As we increase the amount of distance and we expand the network of tubing, that network of blood vessels that our heart must supply with blood, that puts ever greater stress on the heart organ. Okay. Okay. Folks, I've seen some commentary over the years. You know, some people will say, well, we should not, you know, we should not shame people for being overweight. And I agree. We should not shame anybody psychologically or emotionally for being overweight. But the position of the medical community is this: if you are overweight, you are physiologically less healthy because you're putting stress on your heart. And that is not a good thing. You're not a bad person if you carry too much body weight, but you are a less healthy person if you carry too much body weight. Okay. Your body is stressed because of the excess tissue. Okay. Okay. So thoughts or questions about adipose tissue? This is simply, you know, our talking point as an example of connective tissue. Do you have any questions? Okay. Folks, we've got to move on here. It's already half an hour into our lecture. So what I'm going to do, you have to wade through this. And let me say, there's going to be a lot of, we're going to be covering a bone chapter pretty soon where I talk about the histology of the bone. So bone is a connective tissue. So this is going to come up again and again, right? In AMP2, you will get an entire chapter on blood. So you're going to get connective tissue in AMP2. This topic is not going to go away. You're just going to get various aspects of it, different angles of it in different contexts in the next semester for AMP2. Okay, folks, let's move forward here. Let's talk about muscle tissue. Okay, so this one is a little bit more manageable in terms of size, in terms of the different types that are available and that we have to kind of refer to and study and talk about. Muscle tissue is described in table 4.9. So please turn to table 4.9. Okay, let me make a couple comments here. Muscle tissue is made of muscle cells, and muscle cells can be referred to by three alternative and equally correct names. Okay, muscle tissue is made of muscle cells. Okay, there are three phrases that mean the same thing. Here we go. Okay, a muscle cell is the same thing as a myocyte, which is the same thing as a muscle fiber. Okay, so I'm going to do it this way. Muscle cell equals myocyte equals muscle fiber. Okay, a muscle cell is the same thing as a myocyte, it's the same thing as a muscle fiber. These three ways of referring to muscle cells are synonymous. They mean exactly the same thing. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Muscle tissue Muscle tissue is one of the main types of tissues that responds to insulin. Muscle tissue is one of the main types of tissues that responds to insulin. Okay. Folks, let me ask you in the chat window. When any tissue responds to insulin, what does the tissue do? What does the tissue do? You know, I definitely appreciate that we haven't really talked about this, and you're not going to get it until AMP2 next semester, but does anybody happen to know? Well, let me ask, if I say this, does this make sense to you? When the tissue responds to insulin, the end result is that the blood sugar goes down, right? Blood sugar goes down when the tissue responds to insulin. So where does the sugar go if it leaves the blood? Where does the sugar go if it leaves the blood? Well, it goes into the muscle. That's right. It goes into the muscle. That's what I'm trying to get you to see. Muscle tissue is one of the main types of tissues that responds to insulin. Okay. Muscle tissue, and when I say muscle tissue, I'm specifically referring to skeletal at this moment. The muscle tissue responds to the insulin by transporting excess glucose from the bloodstream to the interior of the muscle cell. Responds to insulin by transporting excess glucose from the bloodstream to the interior of the muscle cell. Okay. That excess glucose is then stored for, you know, as a possible energy source. Okay. So, question in the chat window. What is the polymerized storage form of glucose inside skeletal muscle tissue called? What is it called? This would be chapter 2. Chapter 2. Okay, Sierra, Rebecca, well done. It's called glycogen. That's right. It's called glycogen. Okay. The excess glucose is stored as glycogen, which can eventually be used as a fuel source. Okay. All right, folks. So, you know, what do muscle cells do? Well, they burn fuel to create ATP to power muscle contraction. Where's the fuel? Where the fuel is glucose, or in some cases, the polymerized glycogen, which is then broken down and used as glucose. Okay. All right. All muscle tissues are made of cells which burn fuel. Okay, that's going to be glucose, to make ATP to contract. That's what they do. They burn fuel, glucose, to make ATP, adenosine triphosphate, the power currency of the cell, like the dollar bill of the cell, to contract. And they do that then, and when they contract, they do what? They generate force. That force can be used to move the skeleton. It can be used to push blood through a blood vessel. It can be used to push food down your digestive tract. Okay, that's the point that I'm trying to make. Okay. So there are three types, as we've said here. All right, let's talk about skeletal muscle. Okay, skeletal muscle, you see in table 4.9, picture A. Skeletal muscle is made of long cylindrical cells that have these stripes going across it. Okay, do you see those stripes going across the skeletal muscle cells? They're called striations. Striations. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. So when you look at skeletal muscle fiber under the microscope, you're going to see these striations. That's one of the distinguishing characteristics of skeletal muscle. Okay. Skeletal muscle cells are multinucleated. That's an odd thing. So I'll put this down as an odd fact. Odd fact. Skeletal muscle cells are multinucleated, right? You learned in chapter 3 about the nucleus, and we consider most cells of the body have one nucleus. Skeletal muscle cells are weird. They have multiple nuclei. The reason they have multiple nuclei is because how the muscle cell is manufactured in the embryo before you are born is kind of similar to having soap bubbles in your kitchen sink kind of fused together into a larger soap bubble. So if each soap bubble in the kitchen sink had its own nucleus and then the soap bubbles fused together into a large soap bubble, all of a sudden the large soap bubble would have all the individual nuclei of the smaller soap bubbles that came together. So the multinucleated state of the skeletal muscle tissue is a byproduct of the way mature skeletal muscles form before you are ever born. Okay. Okay, let's see here. Skeletal muscle is voluntary. And what we mean by that is that your mind can consciously think of it and your muscle will respond. Okay. Your mind has conscious control over the tissue. Please do me a favor. Please humor your old professor just once. On the count of 3, I want your brain to order your tongue to lift up and reach the top of your mouth, the roof of your mouth. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Did your tongue obey your brain? Did it do it? So is the tongue a skeletal muscle? Yes, the tongue is a skeletal muscle because your brain can control it. Okay. All right. So skeletal muscle functions to provide motion, to maintain posture, to generate heat, and also a little bit to protect, right? The muscle around your arm bones protects the bone, does it not? The soft tissue of your muscle of your biceps brachii here protects the humerus that's deeper to it, okay? Okay, please let me know if you have questions, folks. In A&P2, I keep talking about A&P2, right? Because there's lots of stuff you're going to get in A&P2. You're going to get conversation about the cardiovascular system in A&P2. Here in A&P1, we will go into some extensive conversations about skeletal muscle physiology. That's ahead for your second lecture exam. So just put that aside for right now. We have cardiac muscle tissue. Okay, cardiac muscle tissue is panel B there. Panel B on table 4.9. Cardiac muscle tissue is made of branched. Okay, branched. Take a look at it. Take a look at the artist drawing, how the muscle fibers seem to go into these fork-like directions, okay? So that's a branching pattern. So cardiac muscle fibers are made of branched, striated cells. Okay. Cardiac muscle cells have a single nucleus. So that makes a difference from the skeletal muscle cells. Skeletal muscle cells are obvious, cardiac muscle cells. Cardiac muscle cells are only found in the heart, in the walls of the heart. Cardiac muscle tissue is involuntary. What that means is your conscious mind cannot control the heart. Okay. You know, yes, maybe is there a monk that has practiced meditation for 40 years that can kind of regulate the heart rhythm a little bit? Probably. But generally speaking, the average person on the street cannot do that. Now, humor me. What I'd like you to do now is order your heart to stop beating for the next 10 seconds with your brain. Tell your heart to stop beating. It didn't listen to you, did it? It did not obey you. Okay, so Mother Nature has designed your body in certain ways so that certain pieces of functionality, such as the heart beating, is too important to let us actually control it with our conscious mind. Why? Because we're all idiots and we'd kill ourselves, right? That's how it is. So Mother Nature said the brain will not provide conscious control over cardiac muscle tissue. All right. One final feature of cardiac tissue, which is very prominent. Take a look at the picture of panel B, table 4.9. Do you see those things called intercalated discs? Intercalated discs. The intercalated discs represent a unique type of cell junction between cardiac muscle cells that allow for the transmission of electrical signal from one cell to the next to coordinate heart contraction. Okay. So you have this electrical signal that's running through your cardiac muscle fibers, and it spreads from one cell to another cell through these intercalated discs. And having that ability allows the muscle fibers of your heart to contract as a team, like a team in a tug of war, if you will, where they work together to coordinate a natural, smooth muscle contraction at basically the same moment of time so that you can efficiently push blood through your body. Okay. Finally, we have smooth muscle tissue. Okay, smooth muscle tissue. That is panel C there. Smooth muscle tissue is made of cells that are not striated. Excuse me. Thank you. Okay, so smooth muscle tissue is a bit of an oddball in which there are no striations, no visible striations. Okay, they're made of cells with no striations. Okay, notice how the cell shape is thick in the middle and thinner on the end. Notice how the cell shape is thicker in the middle and tapered or thinner at each end. Okay. And so, okay, we know where we find skeletal muscle. It's all along the bones of our skeleton. We know where we find the heart muscle. It's in our heart. Where do we find smooth muscle? Well, all over the body as well. So smooth muscle tissue is found in the iris of your eyes. It's found in the walls of blood vessels. It's found in the airways to the lungs. It's found in the stomach. It's found in the intestines, found in the gallbladder. It's found in the urinary bladder, found in the uterus, on and on and on, many, many places, okay? I will mention as well that the smooth muscle tissue is involuntary. Your conscious mind cannot control it. Okay, go up to your carotid artery, which is underneath your mandible on your neck, and find your pulse. Find your pulse. Can you find it? Are you alive? I hope so. Okay, that's your carotid artery. The anatomy of that artery, the wall of the artery, includes smooth muscle tissue. So now what I want you to do, have your brain order the smooth muscle tissue of the carotid artery to collapse shut. Go ahead. I'll wait for you to do that. Obviously, it's not working, is it? Your brain cannot control that. Okay, again, blood circulation is too important to leave to our own conscious control. Okay, folks, any questions about muscle tissue? Okay, let's wrap this chapter up by talking about nervous tissue. Nervous tissue is table 410. Okay, there's only one panel here for it, which makes it seem like it's super simple. It's not super simple in terms of the physiology, but we can talk more about this. Okay, nervous tissue is primarily made of two types of cells. Those are neurons. Okay, neurons are the electrically excitable cells. These are cells which can be activated by various stimuli to create electrical signals called nerve impulses. Okay. For example, the taste buds on the surface of your tongue, right? Your taste buds are sensory receptors that are part of the anatomy of your tongue. By the way, you're going to learn tongue anatomy in the third part of your lab at the end of our semester together. So if you didn't think there's anything to learn about the tongue, you wait, okay? So tongue anatomy, the taste buds, all right? Taste buds are multicellular sensory receptor structures that include a neuron. And so when you have food molecules that bind to special proteins that are part of the anatomy of the taste bud, the neuron is depolarized, which is a fancy way of saying it generates an electrical signal that spreads into your brain, and you say, oh, that food was very sweet, or that food was very salty, or that food was very bitter, or whatever the flavor profile might be. Okay. So neurons are the cells that can generate the electrical signals. That's the first kind of cell, and you see that there in table 410. There are also cells that are called neuroglial cells. These are also called glial cells for short. And these cells, well, they do a whole bunch of stuff. They tend to take care of the neurons. They tend to be the butlers, nannies, and caretakers of the neurons. Okay. Some, what I'm not telling you at this moment, because we'll get this stuff later, is that there's actually different kinds of neurons. And we'll talk about the different kinds of neurons later. There's actually different kinds of neuroglial cells. We'll talk about the different kinds later. Some neuroglial cells actually function in the immune system to protect your brain, okay? All right. Okay, folks, let's see here. I'll mention, let's see, we're going to get this later, but I'll mention it because it's in table 4.9. When you look at the anatomy of the neuron, notice that you're going to have these things that are called dendrites and axons, okay? Notice the dendrites. Okay, notice the dendrites. Dendrites are these tiny little projections off the cell body of the neuron. Dendrites tend to receive information from another source. So dendrites are projections of the neuron that receive information. And notice the axon, right? Many neurons only have a single axon, although it is possible to have a neuron with multiple axons. That does exist. And axons are projections of the neuron that transmit information. Okay. All right. So we are headed to a giant conversation about nervous system physiology towards the bottom 1/3 of our time together this semester. Okay. Folks, do you have any questions about nervous tissue? Do you have any questions about anything we talked about in chapter 4? Obviously, there were many subtypes of tissues, particularly epithelial and connective, that I did not give you a detailed blow by blow, because if we had to do that, I would need another 2 weeks of lecture time with you. We don't have that time. So I need you to wade into it. For your exam 1 coming up, I need you to think about the tissue characteristics. Tissue characteristics will serve you well for exam 1. Okay, anything at all you'd like to talk about for chapter 4? Okay, if not, I'm going to start chapter 5. Chapter 5 will not be on exam 1. So we have now covered all the content in lecture that will be testable for exam 1, chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4 next Tuesday. Remember, on Thursday, I'll start class by asking you if you have any questions for exam 1 content. All right, let's begin chapter 5. All right, so chapter 5 in your textbook in my physical book, I have a physical textbook. It's on page 149. And the chapter opens with a picture of somebody that's obviously experienced some major burns to their skin. I mean, that's obviously not a happy place to be. Okay, so we need to talk about chapter 5. Chapter 5 is not titled the skin, it's titled the integumentary system. Okay, so let's change gears here. Chapter 5, the integumentary system. Okay, so when we say integumentary system, what exactly are we referring to? What makes up the integumentary system? Let's define this. The integumentary system is made of skin. Okay, most people think integumentary system equals skin, and to a first approximation, that would be okay because skin is the largest organ of the body. So it's a big deal. Yes, the integumentary system is the skin, but it's not just the skin. Okay, so the integumentary system is made of skin, your hair. Your hair is part of the integumentary system. Now, let's be honest. Doesn't the hair stick out of the surface of your skin? Doesn't the hair stick out of the surface of your skin, right? Okay. So the integumentary system includes the hair. It also includes oil and sweat glands. Okay. Well, the oil and sweat glands, okay. Do you ever get a circumstance, particularly perhaps in the wintertime, or perhaps if you're a healthcare provider where your hands get overly dry and your skin starts to crack? You know what I'm talking about? Maybe you wash your hands too frequently and your skin gets dry and cracked. That's because you're removing your skin oil, right? The skin oil is there for a number of reasons, including to keep the health and vitality of your skin. So if you're washing it off all the time, that's a bad thing. So there are glands embedded in the dermal layer of your skin, which is responsible for producing oil. Okay. There's also sweat glands, which you know, like under your armpits, which release perspiration that then evaporates off the surface of your skin to cool your body. So all of these things are associated with the skin. Okay. So oil and sweat glands. The integumentary system also refers to nails. Okay. So, you know, if you look at your fingers, okay, look at your fingernails. Don't your fingernails come up underneath the skin? Don't they come up underneath the skin? So there's a relationship to the skin there. And then there's a variety of sensory receptors that are embedded in your skin that allow you to detect a variety of sensations. Okay, so, you know, is the integumentary system just the skin? Well, it is just the skin, as long as we appreciate that there's a variety of other important things embedded in the anatomy of the skin that allow the skin to be what it is and do what it is and experience the sensations that it experiences. Okay. Number 2, dermatology. Maybe some of you go to a dermatologist. Dermatologist is the medical specialty that deals with the diagnosis and treatment of integumentary system disorders. So if you're one of those people that sweats profusely, like you kind of sweat too much all the time, well, maybe you go to the doctor and they give you a prescription level antiperspirant or something like that. Okay. Okay. Dermatology is a medical specialty Okay, that looked okay to me. The medical specialty that deals with the diagnosis and treatment of integumentary system disorders. Okay, let's jump right off the deep end of the pool, folks. Let's start talking about the structure of the skin. Structure of the skin. Okay, number one, we'll type down what I've said previously. The skin is the largest organ of the body. It is an organ, and it is the largest organ in terms of both your body weight and surface area. If you could peel off your skin, which I don't recommend, and weigh it, it would weigh more than any other individual organ. And if you were to stretch it out, as it basically is across the surface of our entire anatomy, obviously it represents the largest surface area. Okay, so I'm going to turn your attention to figure 5.1. That's probably a very reasonable starting position here for looking at the anatomy of the skin. Okay, and so, okay, so your skin is made of 2 layers of tissue that are given special names. That would be the epidermis. Okay, the epidermis is epithelial tissue. You know that because epithelial forms coverings over the body. It forms the body's surfaces, right? That was one of the major talking themes of chapter 4. Okay, so the epidermis is made of covering epithelium. Okay. Well, why don't we call it epithelium? Why don't I just say the skin's top layer is epithelium? Why do I got to call it epidermis? Well, it's just the way it's done. In other words, as we get more focused on a topic, you'll get more specialized terms that refer to things that are more generic in nature. The epidermis is epithelium, but this epithelium specifically is the epithelium of the skin. It's not the epithelium of the inside of a blood vessel. You see what I'm saying? Epidermis is epithelium of the skin. It is not epithelium of the inside of a blood vessel. Okay? So the skin is made of epidermis, which is just epithelium. And it is also made of the dermis, and that is the connective tissue. Okay? You see these terms bracketed along the right side of figure 5.1. Okay? Now we need to clear up a misconception, okay? That often comes about. Many folks, and in fact, I've even seen it printed in certain textbooks, believe that the skin is made of 3 layers, and that is not true. Okay? Some books and some sources will say that the 3rd layer of skin is the hypodermis, or the subcutaneous tissue that you see on figure 5.1. Okay. All right. So, okay. Misconception. The layer of tissue immediately underneath the dermis is called the hypodermis or subcutaneous layer. This layer of tissue is not technically part of the skin. It is not technically part of the skin. Okay. So if you see that somewhere that the hypodermis is part of the skin, that is not true. Okay. And I will point out that your own textbook tells you the story correctly. Okay. It's hard for me to show you here, but in your textbook, there's a paragraph that begins with the following phrase. So this paragraph is somewhere close to the last picture of figure 5.1. Scan the text of your textbook. Do you see a paragraph which starts with the following words? Deep to the dermis. Deep to the dermis. Do you see it? Deep to the dermis. Let's read that. Deep to the dermis, but not part of the skin. Not part of the skin is the subcutaneous tissue, okay? So don't let anybody confuse you on that. The subcutaneous layer is not technically part of the skin. Well, why isn't it? Because the cells that make up the subcutaneous layer do not share an embryonic origin, with the cells found in the epidermis and dermis. Okay. I will say, just so you have it in your notes, obviously when you look at the subcutaneous tissue there, it's basically made of adipocytes. So you have a layer of fat under your skin, right? You have a layer of fat under your skin. And so it's used as a storage depot to keep biochemical fuel stored for any time when you might be under starvation conditions, okay? The subcutaneous layer is a layer of fat deep to the skin, which is used as a fuel storage depot. Okay. All right, folks. So before we go any further here, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the types of cells that we find in the epidermis. Okay, so at this moment, you're looking at figure 5.1. And you kind of see a lot of stuff there. But right now, I want you to focus on epidermis and dermis. Epidermis and dermis. Those are the big two layers of tissue that make up the structure of the skin. Now we're going to start talking about the epidermis in some more detail. Okay. So let's see. This would be number 3. The epidermis. Okay. So the epidermis is made of keratinized, stratified, squamous epithelium. Wow, that sounds like a topic from chapter 4, doesn't it? Okay. The epidermis is made of keratinized, stratified, squamous epithelium. Okay. That word keratinized means that the epidermal cells contain a great deal of keratin protein. Keratin protein provides structural integrity to the skin. Stratified means there's multiple layers of it, right? Squamous means that the cell shape is flat and thin like pancakes. And epithelium obviously is that it's covering a body surface, okay? So let's talk about the types of cells we find here. Okay, for this, I would turn your attention to figure 5.2. Figure 5.2. Okay, this is not an exhaustive list, but it is a useful starting point. Okay, so keratinocytes. You might hear the term keratinocyte. A keratinocyte is a type of epithelial cell that is absolutely chock full of keratin protein. And this keratin protein provides structural rigidity to the skin, and it provides a tiny amount of physical resistance to abrasion, like the kind of abrasion I mean, obviously, if you fall down on the cement, like my little boy did this weekend and skinned his elbow really good, it's going to hurt. But if you simply touch your fingers across the surface of the wall in your room or the surface of the desk that you're working on, right, your skin does not rip off, it doesn't fall apart. And that's because there's good structural integrity to the cells of the skin. That resistance to physical abrasion is due to the keratin protein that's part of the cells. So keratinocytes are a type of epithelial cell found in the epidermis. That manufactures a lot of keratin protein. Keratin protein provides resistance to physical abrasion. Okay. All right. Well, there we have keratinocytes. That's part of the epidermis. We also have melanocytes. Oh, okay. I'm out of time here. Let's just finish this one. Melanocytes are a type of epithelial cell that manufacture a special pigment that can contribute to our skin color. It's called melanin. Okay. And I think I'll stop right here. Okay. I'll stop right here. Okay. Folks, do you have any questions?